Hey everybody, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time going over what the second exam or test 2 looks like coming up this Friday, so that's pretty cool. I think it's important to remind you that I'm not trying to trick you on any of these questions that I have here. So if you're doing something and it just seems way too hard because you think I'm trying to trick you, don't think that. Okay, so let's talk about it. First of all, there are 7 multiple choice questions, and of those 7 multiple choice questions, oh, I have a thing on my finger. Of those 7 multiple choice questions, 4 of them are going to be Le Chatelier's principal questions. Okay, in various forms. So I would definitely make sure you know Le Chatelier's principle. You know, the stress on the system and how the system reacts based on that stress. You know, I gave you one of these things when we were doing Le Chatelier's principle in class about how it's good multiple choice questions. So definitely a thing. Another question is kind of knowing what a buffer is, being able to identify it, knowing kind of what it does in solution, maybe even the definition, those sorts of things. That's always good. Kind of knowing what a conjugate acid or a conjugate base is. That's identifying or being able to write those things. That's good. And then the last one is writing reactions. Question number 6 deals with writing reactions, and keep in mind that that there's only really 3 different reactions that we're dealing with. So it's kind of my quiz to see if you can remember those 3 or yeah, like just knowing what the 3 are. Okay. And then there's some short answer questions. The first couple, I give you the strong acid or strong base, and you have to find the pH of those. And then the last one is defining what makes something strong versus weak. Things that we talked about in class that I tried to give you a little bit of a heads up, like, hey, know this. Okay, so, but now the long answer questions. Okay, so there's 3 of them. That's probably plenty for this. Okay, so the first question is Le Chatelier's principle. Now, on top of there being 4 multiple choice questions, now there's an open-ended question or long answer question that deals with Le Chatelier's principle. So instead of having to choose the stuff, I'm going to ask you to predict which way the reaction is going to go or what's going to happen based on the stress that's put on the system. But then I need you to also explain why. You know, as the stress is put onto the reactant side, it's going to shift, one way or the other. So so make sure that you can explain why it's shifting, okay, or why you have an increase in the products or increase in the reactants. Then the second question is kind of a normal equilibrium problem. We're not titrating. We're not doing anything like that. We're just taking an acid or a base, and we're just trying to figure out what its hydronium ion concentration is. And then there's a second part where you're doing another thing where you find out what its pH is. So it's just kind of a straight up, can you do an equilibrium problem? And then the last question, question 3 of the long answer section, that's the one that is going to tell me whether you truly understand acid-base equilibrium. Can you do a titration curve problem where you're given, in this case, I think I give you 5 different titration points, okay, so 0 milliliters, whatever else milliliters, and you have to do the equilibrium for each of those conditions, okay, and there's a lot that goes into that. You have to do stoichiometry, and you have to do equilibrium, and you have to know how to do dilutions, because when you add volume, the volume changes, and then the concentration changes, and then things get wacky. So there's a lot of things that go into that titration curve which make it, as a professor, teacher, that make it a really good question to see if you can do it. Now, for you, the student, that may mean that it's not so good. But, as a teaching question, I think that you can see that it's a good question to test whether you know how to do a lot of different parts of chemistry. So that's the questions overall, or that's the question specifically, but I wanted to mention three points, okay? And these are things that I highlighted all the time in class, but bear repeating yet again. Okay, the one thing is that there are really only two types of equilibrium problems, other than Le Chatelier's principle. Okay, we'll put that to side. But when you're doing math, there is a problem where you have to find the constant, and then there's a problem where you have to find the conditions. So if you're given the constant, then you must be having to find the conditions. Now that means that you can find the pH, or you could find the other concentration of the conjugate. Like, there's a lot of different ways that you can find the conditions, but if you're given the constant, that must mean that you have to find the conditions. Okay, and keep in mind, the second point is that we have just one reaction for acid. We have one reaction for base equilibrium problems, and then there's just one reaction when we're doing the titration problem. Okay, so when we're doing the stoichiometry part of the titration problem, you do acid plus base, and that gives us your answers, the conjugates of each. Okay, so if you keep that in mind, that may help you, especially with that third open-ended question. Okay, and then, of course, Le Chatelier's principle, also a big portion of the test. Just make sure that you understand that when you put the stress on the system, if you put the stress on the system on this side, okay, that means that it's going to roll downhill and it's going to go to the other side. Okay, so the other side is going to increase to alleviate that stress. So you can go this way and it can do the same thing. So that's the review in a nutshell. So I know you guys can do this. You have it. You got it. If you have any questions, feel free to email or let me know. Have a great day.